Hey guys, it's Al from Altruistic Channel, and I'm actually coming to you because I'm actually going to be discussing something new and exciting that I'm going to be doing all of next year, but I've already started this year and I wanted to kind of give an intro to it. As I was working my way through my own spiritual journey, many of you know that I had a very interesting experience. I got kind of thrown into a dark night soul directly after someone tried to kill me. And so because of that, I kind of went ass backwards through the process. And so I kind of had a rough time with it, not knowing what it was and not understanding what the awakening was and not understanding what any of it was. And I certainly didn't know how the hell I ended up ascending. You know what I mean? So what I wanted to do is I wanted to make the path a little bit brighter, if you will, like from the center of myself outwardly. And I just wanted to make sure that I helped anybody that was kind of in the same situation that I was in the past. Because, at this point, when we're moving forward, especially into 2020, it's all about the future. So this is the best way sometimes to let go of the past, is to take it and convert it into something positive. And that's where you guys come in. So what basically I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be talking about the spiritual journey as is, starting from the basics all the way to more advanced, like in the collective consciousness and what ascension and all that is. And so the way I think I'm going to do it is I'm going to do the ascension portion, the collective consciousness and ascension, and the people who believe in that. I'll put that on Al Altruistic Channels Aravalo. I'll put that on that website, on that page, I should say. And then on the other one, which is just Altruistic Channels, will be that takes you from the very beginning, from like, just waking up, waking, and then getting into the ascension process, what a dark night soul is, and kind of keep it a little bit separate, just so there's like a beginner section and then kind of a little bit more intermediate. And then I'm going to leave the rest of it to the pros, because there's a lot of wonderful people like Mr. Meter, Loria, Fox. There's a bunch of wonderful people already out there that are doing amazing work. Oh, and Leo, especially from with the spiral dynamics. So we'll be kind of talking about these things in a general, like touching base over it, kind of telling the story of where we're at, and kind of getting everybody on the same page and kind of learning something about each other's belief systems and kind of the journey of spirituality in the world. And so I'll be doing it from that standpoint more so than actually telling anybody directly what to do. Anybody who's actually been on the path for a minute knows that there's like certain things that you come across that are absolutely not to be repeated. And so there are some things that I cannot necessarily share. But that would be more towards those of you who are watching this on altruistic channels, altruistic channels Arbala. I know that sounds a little bit confusing, but it's just easier because I have the two channels to do it that way, so that people don't get ahead of themselves. Because as we know, the moment you do that, you get thrown back. And so, kind of the moral of story is that I just feel like, Spirit is just asking me to step up to developing the leadership skill sets that we need now that we're at the spiritual clearing, and some of us are at the top of the mountain. It's now time to start helping everybody else up. And so, and not in a derogatory way, but more like in a loving, embracing, all like empowering way. So it's just going to be a much better model. So, like, to begin with, one of the things that I'm going to focus on is I'll be focusing specifically on introducing where spirituality is kind of at right now, and the fact, what's going on with religion as far as organized religion, kind of the problems that are going on there. We'll briefly talk about that because this is more of an uplifting experience. I don't want to get like down. Like, I want the tonality to be like very up. And then also we'll be moving into like astronomy, because I think more people know. I think people know more about their astrological sign at this point than they do about their actual like belief system in the Ten Commandments. You know what I mean? And spirituality, in and of itself, is all about hope and faith. So we're gonna be focusing on that, as opposed to putting a name to it or something divisive to it, because as we can see, that's only breeded hate, segregation, sexism, homophobia. It's just not of service to God anymore. I don't, and I just don't want to engage that part of it. So it'll be much more rewarding to like actually talk about all the different topics that we'll cover, like astronomy. Then we'll move into esoteric astronomy. We'll talk about the actual history of religion. So we'll go all the way back to where Catholicism comes from and Abraham, and we'll go all the way through everything that I've done. And so far, I have up to 12 lectures, so that'll be basically about 14, I'd say about 13, 14 little episodes here that I'll be posting. And it's just like a lecture series that I go much more in depth in person, but because it's YouTube, I don't want to get like in trouble, or I don't want to kind of alienate anybody necessarily in it, because it's about getting people back to their whoever they believe in. So it's getting them back to spirit, to the creator. It's about expanding everyone's horizons. It's one of those things that you notice the further up you go in ascension, is that one, you understand that you were at the very bottom yourself. And the compassion that you need to have for the other people begins at remembering who that was, not taking on the weight of the emotional landscape that was, but remembering what you learned from that experience in order to then help the next person maybe not have as rough of a time like I did. Like, honestly, it was a nightmare. Like, it was just unbelievable. It took me a year because immediately through the Dark Night Soul, I was already awakening. And so there was two things happening at once, but I didn't understand the dynamics. And there was no one around me in Louisiana that was, part that was having this happen to them. And so it's just very important for me to remember and preserve what the journey has been like in order to better help people blah, blah, manifest what it is that's best for them, as because you don't want the wrong tone. Like, that's important. So, like, little tidbits like that. But it begins basically with just covering the history of all things. And it's mainly it's the main thing that I'm noticing in general with this particular time period is that everybody's kind of coming into their powers, if you will, like innate things that they are gifted with in this world. And so that's more of the advanced stuff that you'll be seeing on the collective side of it. But there are things like mysticism and how there are questions beyond, like the God principle and the universal principles, like what they're expansive thinking that a lot of people are not able to even remotely host at this point as far as intellectually, that we can discuss more in depth on that side of it. But it all begins with like a cross section. And so it's important as we go that, I guess my point is that we're going to make sure that everybody is at the same level as far as understanding what we're talking about. So even though you may have been raised Catholic, it'll still be good to look at the history of, be with us when we cover that information, so that if there's anything that you want to ask or anything that you want to know or things that you want to interject that that I didn't cover, then you can put it in the little comments below. And it's just a great way to further build the environment of a community. Because, like, at this point, a lot of us have gone a long way up, and we're kind of at the top here, and we're kind of looking around going, okay, I see who's up here, but they don't need, they're good. And then so it's kind of like we're trying to build that network, that safety network. Everybody's worrying about getting to the fifth dimension. We still haven't finished the third thing right now, and we still have a whole world. There's a whole subset of people, a big quarter of them, that are about to wake up. We haven't prepared, really. So it's time that we start doing that. But in order to do that, I think it's good to lay down the foundation, if you will. So besides that, like the esoteric astrology is really covered well by like Mr. Meter. So I would always recommend to go to direct sources, people who are like are masters of their own thing. I'm all about spirituality. That's my specialty. So it's like a cross section of all things. And so I'll be sharing with you all of the information that I've gathered. We'll talk about the Emerald Tablets, and we'll talk about esoteric astrology and esotericism. We'll talk about Catholicism. We'll talk about Buddhism. Everything that I have like researched and learned about we'll be covering, but it won't be like a complete in-depth master's class. At this point, it's just introduction across the board. And the reason that it's so important, and I think the reason Spirit's very, very much about driving me to do this now, is because of the fact that it's incredibly hard to honor someone else's belief system if you don't honor your own. And then when you do honor your own and you get to a point where you're all about your faith, you can't then be judgmental about somebody else's faith, because then you stop them from sharing their faith. So then now both of you can't do either thing, because you can't have your cake and eat it too in other directions, So it gets to that difficult point where people stop being able to communicate. We're watching that play out all over the politics. Everywhere you look, they're at an impasse, because they're so close to each other that it's almost like you can't see each other because of the fact that you're like this close, like that close. And so that blocking is stuff that we need to kind of get rid of. And so that's kind of where everything is at this point. And so as a collective conscience, we are definitely at a very crucial part right now where we are essentially separating into two different mindsets: the victimized mindset, or the ones that are actually going to try to rectify their own parts, what they are accountable for. And it's a very hard lesson. And so any one of us who has actually gotten to a point where we feel that we are owning our stuff and that we're like really in control of our destiny to some degree, or all the way, because in the end you are. But if you're at that point, then it only makes sense to then turn around and like put your hands out and help everybody else come up the mountain. It wasn't an easy mountain. And not everybody is as strong as you or I am. And I'm not even that strong. I just got lucky in a lot. And the closer you are to who you are and the more truth that you've spent your life living in, and the more, and I hate to say this, but the more of a dick you were, or the more of a bitch you were, then more than likely, if that's part of who you are and that's part of your essence, obviously you're going to have to work on some things, but you're going to have less of a hardship trying to get up than everybody else, because other people still, like they have polite lies, and it's all these little nuances that kind of screw everybody over. So sometimes finding your center is harder to do. And so we'll cover stuff like that, like things that we never thought of. Even though you have negative traits, those negative traits probably got you where you were a lot faster than if you had not been the personality. You know what I mean? And then if you weren't so religious, you wouldn't have been so open to different ideas, or reverse. And so all of those things are very, very important for us to help everyone expand upon their horizons. It's all about us moving to the next level, right? Like, it's about not just you and I ascending when we're ready. It's about everybody coming up, and everybody kind of moving up and getting in touch with their spirituality. Because even if you're not spiritual, at the end of the day, like, let's say that something hypothetical like judgment comes. First question I got to ask is, would you see that as judgment night, or would you look at it as initiation? Are you being initiated, or are you being judged? Because that's the first problem, right? That's the first layer. And so that's something that we always tell brand new people, that if you're in a spiritual path or being awakened and you're kind of dazed and confused and don't know where to begin with that. Immediately find your perspective and center it on a positive. Because if you immediately go negative, then you kind of put a tinge of that tonality on all of your process. And that's what I did. And it really sucked. I mean, it took me a year to get through that. And then it took me another year to kind of get where I am on my ascension path. And so it was brutal. And so instead of doing that, listen to some of us that are kind of like your brothers and sisters in this brotherhood, and let us guide you a little bit. You don't have to accept anyone else's truth ever, because your truth is your truth. My truth is my truth. The moment that you accept my truth, it becomes your truth. So always, kind of listen and kind of see what speaks to you and adopt that. But the point is that as we move up these things, and as we change and evolve, it's important to just connect with one another. And so at the end of the day, that's what this little series is going to be. So I don't want to take too much of your time now, but I still have some other things that I'm going to work on. But the next episodes will be more, literally will be detailed on each topic. So we'll start off with the astrology. That'll be the first thing that we talk about, because I just find that it's really a smooth way to get people into the spiritual leadership conversation and kind of the dynamic of what spirituality has become, as opposed to the dogmatic of the old. And so we'll begin with that one, and then after that we'll go into the esoteric astrology. For both of those, I would literally say to go to Mr. Meter. He has a wonderful website, and then we'll be covering other things along the way, and I'll always put shout outs to people that I really, really respect. And so we'll make sure that we keep that brotherhood going for them as well, right? So that's pretty much it for me. I know that was kind of like a really fast pace, but I talk really fast. I've been like that since I was a kid. I think I had the original ADHD, but I think it was just called youth, and I still keep youthful. But the point is that that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. I just wanted to let you guys know what I'll be working on with you guys, and I hope you guys check into it. And then, as always, please like or subscribe to the channel. It's really appreciated. And if you haven't yet, go ahead and check out the 2 books on Amazon.com from Al Arvalo. And anything else, just let me know, guys. I'm always available for emails or questions. So I look forward to working with you guys in this way. And please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks. Bye.